Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, it's been a kind of a slow week for us in the 2A world. The one thing I will say is make sure to go out and make your comment on the ATF's proposed universal background check. And that also affects the sale of firearms. If you've sold one for profit, they will be coming after you. In that same vein, let's talk about what is kind of becoming a bigger deal than it should be, mostly because you should know that this is probably something you shouldn't have bought, and if you did, you probably had that kind of sketchy feeling anyway because it was probably bought from one of those things on Facebook, like a wish item. Solvent traps. So the ATF is now trying to do what they did with force reset triggers, and they're going to try to get you to basically admit guilt for something that you've done inadvertently, probably not realizing that it was, or maybe it was realizing how bad this is, or how messed up it is. It isn't really messed up. It's just you probably could have screwed up your firearm more so. That's from my point of view. That's solvent traps. So if you don't know what a solvent trap is, and you're in the 2A world, it's basically a tube that has, it's supposed to be for cleaning your weapon so that you can catch the solvent at the end of the muzzle and save mess. Okay. The problem is that these solvent traps usually came from foreign entities, and what they did was mark these things to where you could drill them to possibly make a suppressor. Well, it is in statute. It's part of the NFA that if you have parts for a suppressor or you have pieces, that could be made into a suppressor or material for a suppressor, it's vague that way. You can be prosecuted for producing and manufacturing a suppressor. What makes these particular solvent traps really sketch is that they had baffles inside of the tube. So why would you have a baffle if it was just intended to catch solvent? And that's where the ATF has legal grounds to prosecute you. The other thing is these baffles also didn't come pre-drilled, but they came with the marks where you should drill them or where you could drill them. Again, I've never saw a real use for this. If you're going to buy a suppressor, buy one that's more reputable, more so because you don't know what the material is that these things are made out of. And what would happen is if this wasn't done right, you'd have a baffle strike or you could have a catastrophic failure and not know it, and parts end up in the bore of your gun and the gun blows up. That's how I've always saw solvent traps. But now the ATF, like they've done with everything else, has started going after people. Now what they're doing is if you've purchased one of these online, and what usually happens is the ATF finds a way to get those records. They come after you. And what they're suggesting, the ATF is saying, and I've got it from legal counsel from multiple lawyers now, do not incriminate yourself. If they call you, shut the hell up. Okay? Get legal counsel immediately if you have one of these. The other thing you could do is videotape yourself destroying the thing, because that's admissible. The one thing you don't want to do is incriminate yourself, though. Admitting that you have something that is now deemed 100% illegal and was probably kind of sketchy when you bought it is probably a bad plan. Okay, it is a bad plan because now they have legal grounds and they're going to go after you. So, and they do have statutory regulation on this, and the law is actually on their side. So I understand that a suppressor is cool, and they are pricey. And maybe this was something you thought that would just be something cool to have and kind of a sideways around this, like an 80% receiver. But it's not. An 80% receiver is something that a hobbyist like myself would take and learn how to manufacture or learn how to mill out, see the process, the final process of building a firearm. You could say the same thing for the suppressors. However, The problem lies in that these were so well marked on exactly where to drill holes, kind of like an 80%er sort of, but this actually has statute behind it. The receiver rules never did, because making a firearm has never been illegal. Making a suppressor is illegal. That, simply put, is already covered with the National Firearms Act. They have several little pieces in there that Congress has already approved on. This is already federal law. So the best advice given is still get rid of the damn thing. Show yourself getting rid of it. If you have any records of it that, could possibly fall into those hands, the best thing to do would be probably to show yourself getting rid of the damn thing or destroying the damn thing. Not just throwing it away, because that's not proof of anything. It'd have to be showing you that you destroyed it. Or get legal counsel in addition to all those things. But number one thing is, if the ATF contacts you, shut the hell up, contact legal representative right away, and get squared away. Because they're going to go after this. They've already have statute for this. And because they're already trying to do other things in this world to go after firearms, because this is something else I wanted to bring up. Biden's key cornerstone, one of his key cornerstones of being reelected. Okay, the odds, I think, are pretty good that the man is not going to get reelected because he can barely stand up. Nevertheless, I've been disappointed by elections before, and it's very possible that somehow this man gets back in power. I personally don't see it. The polls don't show it. But there's a lot of people that still hate Trump, and they would vote against him. And the truth of the matter is, we have someone who's 77 years old and one that's 81 now. Neither one of these is a good option, in my opinion, for the best way forward. Here's why. The number one reason I have with the age of these guys is the median age or the life expectancy for American males now is now at 77. So that means our 73. That's what I mean. So what this means is that your odds of getting past 73 aren't as good as they once were. Okay, we still have a lot of people that have made it past 73 and are still vibrant and everything else like that. I'm playing the odds, though, that that's still not a good plan. We've had generations of people in office that have been in office forever. That isn't the case with Trump. I understand that. The guy's still vibrant and everything else. My key problems with Trump have to do with take the guns first and the battles we've had to fight since then, and his age. Those are the only problems I really have with the man. If it comes down to Trump or Biden, I'm voting Trump. There's no doubt about it. And the reason why I say that is that there is no lesser of two evils with this. Biden has proven that he's abjectly evil, especially when it comes to 2A advocacy or 2A in general. And one of the cornerstones of his reelection bid is gun control. And this has been announced. He has went through several iterations to talk about, we need to finish this. That's what he said in his own. If you want, or if you think you need to have a weapon to take on the government, you need an F-15, maybe some nuclear weapons. That's what he said in 2021. But what he said right now is basically finish the job. He said this in several speeches, and national polls have shown that they're still probably not going to do this. Case in point, Friday, Black Friday, is a record sales day for everything, right? Well, this one made it again for firearms. There were, let me see here, 600,000 plus records for NCIC background checks. Now, what does that mean? An NCIC background check or a NICS check doesn't necessarily mean one firearm. It could be multiple firearms. So the numbers could actually be a hell of a lot bigger in this than what they're actually saying. But what it shows is that the American people do not like gun control. It always takes one of those stupid idiots going and shooting up someplace for people to start thinking about gun control. Now, I can speak to that personally because of the incident that I've talked about so many times on this that I'm not going to mention it again tonight. But there was the only time that I actually considered maybe we could do something to regulate this, to fix this. Truth of the matter is, we all know crazy people do crazy things. But what is really cool is seeing that these sales keep going. You know, time and time again, we keep seeing these reports that NICS checks have gone up. They haven't decreased. That shows there are more and more people that realize that their safety and their security is in their own hands, that they have to be their own first responder. An NBC poll came out and it raised eyebrows because it showed about 72% of gun owners say that protection is a major reason for owning their gun. 32% said hunting. 30% said for sporting, shooting. 15% for collection. And 7% said it was part of their job. Now think about that. That means that there's a ton of people that are willing to say on a poll that they actually are advocating for the 2A in the United States. There's also a ton of people that will reject going anywhere near a poll, period. I'm still of the volition, and it's been proven out in other surveys, that there is a silent majority of gun owners that are never going to tell you what their beliefs are or any of that stuff because they are gun owners. So our group, our culture, our 2A friends is expanding where everyone else is contracting. And if you look at what's happening culturally, this is why I keep saying, trying to give you those white pills, why we're winning. Culturally, you're seeing a revolution or the Overton window shift back towards normalcy. You're seeing people reject the idea that men can be women. The Daily Wire is putting out a film that is all about that type of thing, and the trailer looks hilarious. So we're seeing culture start shifting that way. You're seeing people pulling away from woke Hollywood. Disney reported itself that their own politics and their own agenda that they've been trying to push out in their movies is shrinking their audience. They lost something to the tune of $750 million in what they've been producing lately. Their latest box office, supposed to be a smash for the holiday season called Wish, failed. Why? Because it had communist ideology in it, basically. People are tired of seeing this stuff. And whether you're an average Joe or an average lady that just sick and tired of this same crap all the time. You know, what has happened during COVID is politics, when they shut everything down, politics became pop culture. Whether you wanted to be in politics, I don't want to be in politics, I've always followed it though, because I find it interesting. Whether you were a person like me or you were an average lay person, you got into politics because you were forced to. They weren't doing TV shows, or very good ones anyway. They weren't doing movies. You couldn't go to the movies. You couldn't go out with your friends. They shut down everything. So what did we do? We tuned into the mass media stuff, and we got fed a steady diet of politics and fear about COVID. Okay? That has echoed and resonated. What really happened is a lot of people woke the hell up when we started hearing about the stuff that they were teaching in schools by seeing it ourselves. Okay? When we were there at the coffee table or at the, your dinner table trying to hold online school, and you heard what was actually being said in the classroom, there was a lot of parents that went, wait a minute, that's not what I send my kids to school for. Personally, having worked for K-12s, I'm of a volition that it's probably about time that they go away. Now, I mentioned this on another podcast, Your Donut, You Eat It, which is about culture, not so much about politics. But the culture of education. Name one other system that we ever keep throwing money at. One other entity or government, not government, any corporation that has ever been throwing money at time and time again, getting no better, not performing better, and yet it is expecting more money going to them with little or no result change. And simple answer is you can say the American education system. You look at what it costs to educate a kid and what school districts are actually worried about. They're worried about that budgetary thing that comes in. In New Mexico, it's a number. It's called a unit value that each kid is worth that's in the classroom. Each kid is worth more for being special ed, being higher or lower, and needing more services than a normal kid is. If you look at the value that we put into the money we put into education, and yet we're not seeing a performance boost in it. A lot of people would say, in my former life, I would have said that was because we're not dumping enough money into it. The fact of the matter is, there isn't enough performance value system there to evaluate what's actually happening. And what the public education system does is they cater to the lowest common denominator. So if you have one kid that's always acting up or two kids that's always acting up in a classroom of 30, the other 28 kids kind of have to ride the pine while the teacher deals with that. Now, a lot of people will say that's on the educator. I would say that's more so on the parent. The parent we've checked out. We've used public education for a long time as a babysitter. It's time for parents to be parents again. Until then, the education system will never fix itself. It isn't a money thing. And the more money we throw at it, the more money they ask for, the greater facilities they have, the more resources they have, is not going to help this until someone addresses the elephant in the room. Ask your kid, does school suck? And see what they say. If you have multiple kids, I bet you have at least one of them that says school sucks. Ask a kid on the street. Because I did, and that woke me up. Asking my kids really woke me up. Because I had one that said, it's not too bad. The other two said it absolutely sucked. What does that tell you about our education system? That's what the government's doing. If we allow them anywhere else in our life, especially in the 2A world, to keep encroaching and keep trying to do these things. I mean, think about the politician that talks out the side of their mouth and their butt about guns. A full semi-automatic. That's one of my favorites. Or this clip has 1,000 rounds, or this gun is capable of firing 1,000 rounds with a 1 billion round magazine or a clip, and these guys don't know what they're talking about. If anything, that should have highlighted how stupid these politicians are, because it shows you they have no knowledge about this one item, this particular item in particular. How many other items that they deal with? The weather, food, education. Do they have no compass, no actual knowledge base? Yet they're making laws that we all have to abide by. This is where we need to fix it. How do we fix it? First thing we do is start pounding pavement. If you believe in something like I do, especially with a 2A and freedom, you need to make your voices known. There was a point in time where we could get away with not saying or not letting our ideals known because we didn't want to be called into the limelight. Well, that time has passed. You're going to have to stand up and you're actually going to have to say, this is what I believe and this is what I feel. Whether you like it or not, that's where we're at. Because if we continue to do what we've been doing, we're going to see these people win time and time again. And with election season coming up, and when I say that, federal elections, so the presidential elections coming up, we have to start being very cognizant of what these leaders or supposed leaders are proposing. And gun control is one of those hot button issues, especially as often as these nut jobs end up doing something stupid and hurting a lot of people. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.